Somewhere above this trail, the story goes, there is a mine full of Spanish silver, sealed shut more than 2 centuries ago and never found again. That legend gave this mountain its name, and the mountain gave its name to the path under our feet. This is the Lost Mine Trail in the far west of Texas, and many hikers call it the single best short hike in all of Big Bend National Park. It climbs a little over 2 miles to a rocky ridge nearly 6,900 feet above sea level, with a desert nation spread out below and Mexico standing on the horizon. It is a January morning, the air is cool and bright, and the trail is waiting. Come walk it with me. First, the map. We are in the Big Bend country of West Texas, named for the great southward curve of the Rio Grande, where the river hooks around a wild block of desert and mountain before turning back toward the Gulf. Big Bend National Park protects more than 800,000 acres here, along 118 miles of the river that forms the border between the United States and Mexico. In the very heart of the park rises a compact cluster of peaks called the Chisos Mountains. Our trail begins at Panther Pass, on the winding road that climbs into those mountains, at one of the highest trailheads you can drive to in Texas. The numbers on this hike are friendly ones. The Lost Mine Trail runs just under 5 miles out and back, climbing about 1,100 feet from the pass to the ridge, and most hikers give it somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. Rangers rate it moderate, which feels about right, a steady climb on a well-built path rather than a scramble. It is also one of the most loved walks in the park, so the small parking lot at Panther Pass fills early, and an early start is part of the local wisdom. That is why we are here just after sunrise, with the mountain still holding its long morning shadows. The first stretch eases uphill through open woodland, a gentle introduction to a very big landscape. The Chisos are what biologists call a sky island, a cool green range rising out of a sea of desert. They are a small range, only about 40 square miles, but they hold a remarkable distinction. The Chisos are the only mountain range in the United States contained entirely inside a single national park. They are also the southernmost mountain range on the American mainland, reaching 7,825 feet at Emery Peak, their highest point. Down below stretches the Chihuahuan Desert in every direction, and up here in the high country lives a different world entirely. Look at the trees around the trail, because in this corner of Texas they are a small miracle. This is a woodland of pinyon pine, juniper, and oak, growing in the middle of a desert that averages hardly any rain at all. The mountains make it possible, catching a little more moisture and holding a little more shade than the lowlands ever see. The Chisos Basin, just over the ridge from us, records about 17.5 inches of precipitation in a year, enough to keep these slopes green. Botanists have counted more than 1,200 plant species in Big Bend, one of the richest collections of any national park. So as we climb, we are walking through a forest that exists because the mountain itself gathers its own weather. These mountains were born in fire. The Chisos were created by volcanic activity in the Eocene epoch, roughly 35 to 44 million years ago, when eruptions and molten intrusions built the high ground we are climbing today. Ages of erosion have carved that volcanic rock into the domes, cliffs, and pinnacles that give the range its dramatic skyline. The reddish stone along the trail, the sheer faces above the basin, the towers on the ridgelines, all of it is the worn-down remains of that ancient volcanic field. It is a landscape that looks unfinished, as if the fires had only just gone out. As the trail gains height, one landmark begins to dominate the view behind us. That great square-shouldered peak is Casa Grande, Spanish for the big house, and it is the signature mountain of the Chisos Basin. It rises like a fortress of layered volcanic rock, glowing gold and rust in the morning light. For everyone who stays in the basin, Casa Grande is the wall outside the window, the first thing lit at dawn and the last thing shining at dusk. From the Lost Mine Trail, we get one of the finest angles on it anywhere in the park. It is worth stopping on the switchbacks just to watch the light move across its face. Casa Grande earns its name honestly. The summit stands as a massive block of stone, its cliffs banded with the layers of old eruptions, its shoulders draped in green woodland. Photographers wait for winter mornings like this one, when low sun and clear air set the rock burning against a blue sky. The peak is the emblem of the high Chisos, appearing on postcards and park posters going back generations. And from up here it reads like a lesson in geology, a volcanic monument slowly being taken apart by rain, frost, and time. About 1 mile in, the trail reaches a saddle, a low notch in the ridge, and the mountain suddenly opens a window to the south. This is the famous viewpoint into Juniper Canyon, a deep green trough falling away between the peaks. Rangers will tell you that if you only have an hour, hike to this saddle and back, because it may be the best single mile in Big Bend. From here you can look down canyon toward the desert, across to the cliffs of Casa Grande, and into the wild inner country of the Chisos. For decades, this path was kept as a self-guiding nature trail, with numbered markers keyed to a little printed booklet explaining the plants and the views. The saddle is where most of those booklets got read, because nobody is in a hurry to leave. Juniper Canyon runs away below the saddle like a green river frozen in stone. Its slopes carry the woodland down from the high country until the trees thin, falter, and give way to desert at its mouth. Backpackers know it as one of the loneliest corners of the park, a place of long silences broken by canyon wrens and wind. From above, you can trace the whole story of a sky island in one view, forest at the top, grassland on the shoulders, and the bare, bright Chihuahuan desert waiting at the bottom. It is 1,000 miles of ecology compressed into a single glance. The name of these mountains is itself a small mystery. Chisos is often translated as ghosts or spirits from an old native word, and the phrase ghost mountains has followed the range for more than a century. Others trace the name to the Spanish word hechizos, meaning enchantment or bewitchment. Nobody can say for certain which story is true, and honestly, on a morning like this, either one fits. Watch the light shift and the shadows pour through the canyons, and the mountains do seem half enchanted. It is the right kind of place for a legend, and the biggest legend of all is waiting just ahead. To hear that legend, we have to drop down to the Rio Grande, more than 2 centuries ago. In the 1700s, Spain built a chain of frontier forts called presidios along the river, and one of them was Presidio San Vicente, standing on the Mexican side near a ford of the Rio Grande. Spanish explorers had been crossing this country since the 1500s, drawn by rumors of silver and gold in the unmapped mountains. The Presidio was meant to anchor an empire on one of its harshest edges. It did not last. Spain abandoned San Vicente in 1781, and the desert began taking the walls back almost at once. Here is the story, as it has been told in Texas for generations. Spanish soldiers from San Vicente, the legend says, discovered a fabulously rich vein of silver high in these mountains and forced enslaved native laborers to work the diggings. The mine was said to lie on the peak just east of us, the one now called Lost Mine Peak, at 7,535 feet, the second highest summit in the range. When the Presidio was abandoned, the tale goes, Apache raiders sealed the entrance to the mine, hiding it from the world. Every version of the story agrees on the ending. The mine was never seen again. And that is how a mountain and this trail came to be named for something lost. Historians will tell you gently that the tale is probably apocryphal, a frontier campfire story polished by 200 years of retelling. Geologists add that the shallow, stony soils of Lost Mine Peak, which support little more than scrub brush and grasses, are unlikely ground for a bonanza of silver. No shaft, no tailings, no rusted tools have ever been found on the mountain. But legends do not need proof to survive. They only need a good ending, and a sealed door full of treasure is one of the best. So the story keeps its grip on the Big Bend, and the peak keeps its name. For a long time, people came here hoping the story was true. Treasure hunters prowled these slopes with picks and burros, following half-remembered directions and hand-drawn maps, certain the lost diggings were one ridge away. They found magnificent views and no silver at all. Today, the only prospecting done on this mountain is for photographs, and the strike rate is excellent. It is a fine joke of history that the mine, which never existed, now draws more people up this trail than any real mine ever could. The treasure, it turns out, was the mountain itself. Lost mine stories are a signature of the borderlands, and the Big Bend collected more than its share. Old newspapers ran breathless accounts of secret Spanish workings, and generations traded rumors of gold in the Chisos the way other towns traded gossip. The stories say as much about the country as about the treasure, a land so vast, so folded and hidden, that anything might be lost in it. Even today, the park holds corners that few people have ever walked. In country like this, a legend has plenty of room to hide. Listen, and you will likely hear the most sociable residents of this woodland before you see them. Mexican jays travel these slopes in noisy family flocks, flashes of soft blue drifting from oak to oak. In the United States, they live only in a few mountain ranges near the border, and the Chisos are one of their strongholds, so for most visitors this trail is a first meeting. They are famously bold, patrolling popular rest stops in case a hiker is careless with a granola bar, though feeding them is against park rules. Big Bend as a whole is a bird watcher's paradise, with more than 450 species recorded, more than any other national park in the country. The jays are simply the welcoming committee. The Mexican jay is a bird built for company. Flocks hold territories together, raise young together, and post sentinels in the treetops while the rest of the family forages below. They are farmers of a kind as well, burying acorns and pinyon nuts by the thousand and forgetting enough of them to plant the next generation of woodland. Watch a flock work through the oaks and you are watching the forest being replanted in real time. In a range named for ghosts, the jays are the liveliest spirits on the mountain. One bird makes the Chisos world famous, and in January it is hundreds of miles away. The Colima Warbler is a small, modest, gray and yellow songbird that breeds in the high oak canyons of Mexico, and in one place in the United States, right here in the Chisos Mountains. The warblers arrive in mid-April, nest through the summer in the high country, and slip away again by mid-September. Serious birders travel from all over the world and hike hours into these mountains for that one small bird. Walking here in winter, we have the warbler canyons to ourselves, and the promise of their return is written into the calendar of the range. A sky island, it turns out, can be a lifeline for a whole species. The Colima Warbler is nobody's idea of flashy, gray-backed, yellow under the tail, easiest to find by its dry trilling song. Its entire United States breeding range fits inside the high canyons of this one small mountain range, which makes it a crown jewel of American bird watching. The first United States record came from these very mountains, and the species has drawn pilgrims to Big Bend ever since. Protecting the warbler means protecting the cool, moist oak woodland it nests in, which is exactly what a national park is for. One small bird, one small range, one big reason this place matters. Every gap in the trees along this trail frames the same astonishing fact: an entire desert spread out below us like a map. This is the Chihuahuan Desert, the great arid heart of northern Mexico and the southwestern United States, and Big Bend is the largest protected piece of it in this country. It is a desert of surprising riches, home to some 60 species of cactus within the park, along with 75 kinds of mammals and 56 kinds of reptiles. Lechuguilla, Sotol, and Ocotillo stitch the slopes below the woodland, marking the frontier between desert and mountain. From up here, you can see exactly where one world ends and the other begins. January may be the best kept secret on this trail. Down along the river, winter days in Big Bend average around 60 degrees, mild enough for shirt sleeves, while summer brings punishing heat that pushes hikers off the low desert entirely. Up here above 5,000 feet, the mornings are crisp, sometimes near freezing, and the air is as clear as it ever gets. Winter is also the dry season, with barely half an inch of rain in an average January, so the odds of a blue sky day like this one are excellent. The crowds of spring break have not yet arrived, and the mountain feels half asleep. Cool air, long views, quiet trail, this is the connoisseur's season in the Chisos. Winter light does something special to this country. The sun stays low and golden through the morning, dragging long blue shadows out of the canyons and setting the grass heads glowing along the ridges. Some years a dusting of snow reaches the high Chisos and turns the sky island briefly white above the tan desert, one of the rarest sights in Texas. Even on a dry, bright day like this one, the season shows in the sharpness of every edge, rock, leaf, and horizon. Photographers call it sweet light, and in January the sweetness lasts for hours. Notice how gracefully this trail climbs, the even grade, the stone steps, the switchbacks that fold the mountain into a manageable morning. That is not an accident. It is craftsmanship from the 1930s. In the depths of the Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps put young men to work in parks across Texas, building everything from cabins to highways, and crews labored here in the Chisos before Big Bend became a national park. They built the road over Panther Pass into the basin, and trails like this one, with hand tools, mules, and muscle. The Corps ran from 1933 to 1942, and much of what it built is still carrying visitors today. Every easy step on these switchbacks is a gift from a work crew nearly a century gone. Picture the basin in those years, canvas tents and stone cookhouses. Young men from Depression struck towns earning $1 a day in one of the loneliest corners of America. They drilled and blasted the road grade over the pass, hauled stone for culverts, and cut trail tread across slopes where everything had to be done by hand. For many of them, it was the first steady work of their lives, and the letters home described the mountains with real wonder. When the park was established, their roads and trails became its skeleton. The Lost Mine was a legend, but the trail to it was built by very real hands. Before the park, this was working country, and hard working at that. By around 1900, sheep, goat, and cattle ranches had spread across most of the Big Bend, and herds grazed even the high Chisos meadows. Farmers along the river raised cotton and food crops near Castellan, and the mountains were cut for timber to feed the settlements and the mines. The land paid a price, thin soils wore down, and the grasslands thinned under all those hooves. When the national park arrived, the herds went home, and the slow healing began. The woodland around us today is nearly a century into that recovery. And then the climbing simply stops, and the world opens. The trail crests a rocky ridge nearly 6,900 feet above sea level, and this is the famous ending of the Lost Mine Trail. At our feet, the cliffs drop into Pine Canyon, a green well of forest sunk into the mountain. Ahead, across the desert, stands the long pale wall of the Sierra del Carmen, a mountain range that belongs to Mexico, so the view itself crosses an international border. Casa Grande, Juniper Canyon, Lost Mine Peak, the whole cast of the morning stands arranged around us. Hikers tend to go quiet up here, and you can hear why. There is almost nothing to hear at all. The Sierra del Carmen is the great eastern rampart of this whole country, a wall of banded limestone rising beyond the Rio Grande in the Mexican state of Coahuila. At sunset, the range famously turns rose and violet, a show people gather to watch from across the park. Its high forests mirror the Chisos, another sky island facing ours across the desert sea, and together the two ranges bracket the Big Bend. Mexico has protected large stretches of that country as well, so the view from this ridge takes in conservation lands on both sides of the border. Standing here, the border feels less like a line and more like a seam joining two halves of one landscape. The legend on this mountain was silver, but the real mining fortune of the Big Bend was quicksilver, the old name for mercury. West of the park, the town of Terlingua boomed on cinnabar ore, and settlements like Bequilas grew up around mining on both sides of the river. For decades, freight wagons and furnaces worked this desert, and Terlingua became one of the leading mercury producers in the nation. When the ore and the market gave out, the towns emptied, leaving stone ruins that travelers wander today. The Big Bend did have its mineral treasure after all, it just was not hiding on Lost Mine Peak. The idea that saved this country was almost as improbable as the legend. In the depths of the 20th century, Texans campaigned to turn this remote corner of desert and mountain into a national park. And on June 12, 1944, Big Bend National Park was established. The state deeded more than 800,000 acres to the nation. Ranches and mines gave way to wilderness, and the Chisos became the only mountain range in America entirely inside a national park. Visitation was tiny at first. The place was simply too far from everywhere. That remoteness became its gift. 80 years on, Big Bend remains one of the least crowded and most beloved of the great western parks. Stay past sunset in Big Bend, and you meet the park's other famous landscape, the one overhead. These are the darkest measured night skies of any national park in the contiguous United States, and in 2012 the park was named an International Dark Sky Park at the Gold Tier, the highest rating there is. On a moonless night, the Milky Way stands up over the Chisos like a lit road, bright enough to cast a faint shadow. Rangers hold star parties, and travelers come for the night sky alone. It is a fitting bonus for a place named for ghosts and enchantment. When the sun leaves, the show simply moves upstairs. Heading down, the morning replays itself in reverse. The ridge, the saddle, the jays and the oaks, Casa Grande standing watch over the pass. We never found the lost mine, and neither has anyone else in 200 years, but it is hard to feel shortchanged. The mountain pays out in silver light on old volcanic stone, in a warbler's empty canyon waiting for April, in a desert that runs to the edge of sight and then keeps going into Mexico. Some treasures stay buried, and some are just lying out in the open, 5 miles of trail from the road, waiting for your boots to find their way to West Texas. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.